Welcome to the next walkthrough on TryHackMe. This room will be Overpass3 hosting. Cool little box, very simple FTP and finding some backup files and then using those backup files to gain access to FTP and then get a web shell and then elevate privileges from that web shell. So cool little easy box. Kind of shows you a little bit of what could happen if you mess up setting up a website or leave files left over on the server. So let's kick it off. So it's another challenge room. Basically, just ask you for the 3 flags to answer that, and doesn't provide you any other information. So we'll definitely need to stick to our processes and make sure that we follow through with our enumeration and then move on from there. So we grab the IP address, so we're going to put that IP address into a text file. Call that targets.txt. So now if we cat targets, we have that IP address, which is good. Go ahead and split the window. We're going to do our 2 different levels of Nmap scanning. That'll be that one. And then we're going to output all formats and call this a init. And then for our detailed scanning, we'll do the one that you kind of see here. Again, we don't have to do the cat targets, we can do the -il for input list. All right, let's get those 2 scans kicked off and see what comes back. So quickly, we see that there's FTP, we see that there's SSH and HTTP. So we did the FTP and the HTTP scripts on Nmap, so that might return anything. While we're waiting for that, we can go ahead and start looking at the HTTP site. So we'll go to the HTTP. We see that this is just a standard page. Some things to kind of note is it is mentioning some employees, so that's some things to kind of note down. So let's clear that and you can use better text editors or like Cherry Tree or things like that. The biggest thing is keeping your notes organized so that when you do need to move forward, you know where to do that at. We're just copying some of these names in here. After we get done with that, we're gonna look at more of the source of the page and stuff like that. We also see James here. Full copy, James. So this is a good user list, a potential user list. So that's good to have that. So let's see if we get any information from the website source. There we go. View page source. So nothing really out of there. No other information gathered from that. So let's open up another pane. Since we do have a website, we'll go ahead and start running GoBuster. We're going to do so we'll do dir and then do URL HTTP. Oh. And then we need to specify a word list. So we'll use the user share word list. And then that's going to be under dirbuster directory list 2.3 medium. We'll want to save this output, and we'll call this Overpass. Misspelled targets. Alright, didn't like my bash concatenation, so we'll just put the IP address there. What is going on? There we go. It was -u instead of -url. Alright, so that's going now. Let's see, back to our scans. What else we got here? Alright, FTP didn't find any valid accounts. We ran, sometimes in the past too, we've tried anonymous, even though it didn't find that, and it worked, so we'll have to try that again. Let's see here. Post options head and trace. Apache 2.4.37 CentOS. So we got a little bit more information there that we're running on CentOS. Nothing more on that. So up here. While that's scanning, let's see if we can figure out what type of technology we're using. So we'll try index.php, file not found. We'll try HTML. Okay, so it's just plain HTML. So we know that it could be anything running underneath there. We have knowledge that it's Apache, but we don't have anything else information-wise. We could look at the FTP site while we're waiting. We can do FTP. We're trying anonymous, no password, login failed, incorrect. Okay. So nothing on that then. Let's see if we can try a different list and see if we get anything different. Oh, there we go. We got a backups folder. Try that. All right. So we get backups.zip. Copy that link location. Let's make a loot directory. And then we'll wget that file. So we see it's there. Let's unzip it. All right, so there's two files in here. There's a customer details XLSX GPG and a priv key. So most of the time, if you've never dealt with GPG, then you wouldn't know what to do with the priv key situation. So GPG is used as keys and like a key ring, and then when you sign messages or you encrypt stuff, you can encrypt it to to the person that you're sending it to, or you encrypt it just in general. And then if you're going to encrypt it in general, then you'd have to have that private key to unencrypt it. And so this is what this looks like we have here. So we can look at this key, and it's just basically a PGP private block key there that you see. And so if we import that, then we'll have the ability to use that key. And to do that, we're going to do GPG import. Then we're going to import that priv key. Okay, so some things to kind of note here, that we imported the public key for Paradox, so that goes back to one of the names that we saw earlier. So that's a good thing to kind of know. And now we can also actually decrypt that file. So we do decrypt and then customer details. And so this is the actual decrypted file. Um, we can cat that regularly, and I'll show you the difference there. So in an XLSX file, it's a zip file of um, the data for Excel, and it has some XML stuff in there, some other data and binary data. But you'll see these here. These are the files inside that zip file for the XLSX. So if we just cat that, just to show you the difference. With PGP, you shouldn't see any of those file names or anything like that. And we kind of don't see that here. And that's the whole point of encryption, right, is to hide that data from eyes at rest when it's sitting on the disk and stuff. So you can see here we don't see anything. Just to give you a clue, here's the last couple lines when it was decrypted, and here's the last couple when it was encrypted. All right, so let's actually put this to a file so we can read this. Okay, so now it is decrypted. And now we need to actually open this. So let's CTFs, TryHackMe, Overpass3, loot, open folder. Archive support not supported. We have LibreOffice in here. We do not. All right. So here's the information. Again, I didn't have LibreOffice installed, so just went to something that would show me the XLSX file. Again, if this is a real test or anything like that, you would be uploading customer data to a third-party service, and if that's not in your agreement, then you definitely get in trouble. In this case, it's just a CTF. So we're interested in this stuff here for sure, and let's see if that'll copy over. So let's do backup.zip, and then we found that information. Cool. So looking back to those potential usernames that we had earlier, right? We had Paradox, and now we have a password for Paradox. We have O'Day. Ollie is the best dog. I don't see an O'Day here, but that's fine. And then we have a Merland Oracle, and we have a Merland Oracle. So we have two potential usernames and passwords to try. So that's good stuff. Um, so let's see. Let's create a username and password list, and then we could use those to brute force the two services, the FTP and SSH, right? All right, so we'll split this pane, and we'll then do a nano, and we'll do users.text, and we're going to do those. We'll need to delete the spaces out front. We're also going to do paradox and Merkle, just like they have it here, just for that reason. We'll put O'Day here. We'll just type that one out. All right, so that's the users list. Let's exit, save that, and then let's do the password list. Okay, we only have 3 passwords from this. But what we'll also do is put the usernames in here just in case. So again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get some kind of foothold on this box. We got some information. This information potentially leads us in the direction of getting access to one of these other services, right? And if we can get access to those other services, then we can see where we can go from there. Okay, all right, so that's all saved up. We'll exit that here. I'll keep this, our notes section up here, and then I'm going to bring that there. All right, so we're going to do Hydra. Again, if you haven't used Hydra before, you can do a little case L and specify a login name and then a lowercase p and an actual password and then the service. Or if you do a capital letter for the L or the P, you can specify a list. And so that's what we're going to do first, right? We're going to try, we'll try with FTP first since that's the lowest port, and then we'll do SSH. We can actually split the window and see if we can do both at the same time. So actually, let's do that. All right, so we're going to type in Hydra. We're going to do the big capital L. We're going to do users.text. Then we're going to do a capital P, and then we're going to do pass.text. And in this case, it will be FTP // and we'll put the IP address. Okay, and then we can copy this and just change it for SSH over here. Okay. Oops. I copied the HTTP. Did the same thing over here. All right, so now we're brute forcing both of those. We're brute forcing SSH and HTTP at the same time. Again, hoping that we will get access to one of these services using those username and passwords. All right, looks like we got one for Paradox here. Okay, so SSH on the server does not support password auth. So we will not be able to log in with a password on that. We would need to get a key. So that's not going to help us with any passwords. So we'll need to have a key. But we do have an FTP credential. We'll go ahead and copy this out and then see what that gets us now. Okay, copy. All right, so now we can FTP. What we're going to do is FTP as Paradox. Okay, we'll do the FTP and then it'll ask us for the username. There we go. Paradox. Okay, we're going to copy this. Oops. Login successful. All right, so we now have access to the FTP site. A big thing about this is typically if you're in Linux, most people will end up doing the ls command, and they might see some files, but it might be more beneficial to do a dir-a. And again, that will show any hidden files. So we're looking here and we see there's a backups, there's a hallway JPEG, an index HTML, a main CSS, and an overpass SVG. So this looks like a web directory. We could cat the index file and see if it's, oops, we'll need to get it and then we'll have to examine it. Okay, so we got it. We'll split the terminal down here. So yeah, this looks very much like the source that we saw earlier. There's the comment about the promise of 5 nines, meet the team. All right, so if we let's echo something into a file here, right? Okay, and then we're going to put that. Okay, so that's send that to the web server now, and if we yep. All right, so we have the ability to write to this web server, which is pretty cool. So we know we're running Apache. The bigger question is, what else is it running? A common one to attempt on this type of situation is just PHP. Usually Apache and PHP are running together, or that PHP service is enabled on there. We won't have a way of telling until we upload a PHP file. If you're looking for your web shells, you can type in web shells and it'll list them out and it'll change to that current directory. So ASP and ASPX are going to be your Windows systems. Cold Fusion module will be you'll be on a site that has Cold Fusion. So then that leaves you with JSP, Perl, or PHP. So that's the case where we're just kind of going to go with PHP. So if we look at this, we cd into PHP. We have the PHP reverse shell right there. And so we need to copy that to our directory where we're doing the CTF stuff. We don't want to mess with this one because our IP might change or things like that. So we'll cp PHP reverse shell. That's going to go into CTFs. TryHackMe Overpass3. Okay, and then we'll CD it back into that. All right, so we have the shell there. Now we'll need to, let's look at it just like we did on some other videos. You want to just evaluate that before you just execute it. So then user data dir equals /temp. We'll make this bigger. All right, so we loaded up the PHP shell in Visual Studio Code. We see here that we'll need to change the IP and the version. That's going to be our IP and I'm sorry, not the IP and the version, the IP and the port. So we'll make this all fives. Our IP here. Okay. Let's try to get bin bash shell if we can. Everything else looks like that's going to be fine. Okay. All right, so we now have a shell ready, and we just need to upload it. And so we're going to upload it just like we did with the other one, the test file. So if we're in this directory, we see that we have the PHP shell. We're still logged into FTP, so we will put PHP reverse shell.php. That's going to upload that to the server, and so now if we go to that, we would get a shell back, but we need to be set up and be ready to catch that. So let's see. I think we're good on GoBuster. We'll go ahead and exit that out. We'll clear this out. All right, we're still in our loot directory, which is fine. And what we're going to do is netcat listen vnp, and we need to be on that same port that we specified before, which was cat php rev shell grep port. All 4 5s. So that's going to be 5555. Okay, so this is listening here. We're good. We've uploaded it, and so we need to just now execute. Okay, that should be good. All right. So we were successful. We got a shell back. We are now on the system, running in that PHP process or wherever PHP is running. In this case, you can see that we are Apache user group and part of the Apache groups. So this usually is what happens if you are on the system as just a as a web shell. So if the system's set up correctly, it's running as this Apache user for that reason. That if the web shell or the web server gets compromised, it's supposed to kind of limit those privileges of what gets accessed. So from here, then we need to escalate our privileges, and so we need to move forward from here. Um, all right. We can cd into home. So we see James and Paradox. So if we go back to our notes there, um, Paradox is the only one that we had a password for. And we did use Paradox's password for FTP. So let's see if that's the same password to log in as Paradox, right? So again, we have a TTY or a terminal to the server currently. And so what we'll do is we'll switch users to Paradox. And if we can, then it should ask us Paradox's password. And we just paste in the password. And it looks like we did get a login. It's just his shell must be bin sh or something else. So we're going to run bin bash and see if we get a good shell. Doesn't look like it. All right, so confirming that if we run who am I, we are Paradox. So we do have a shell, just not a good one. So from this we could, we can run background our session and see if we can get the Python TTY and such running. Or we could just work with what we got. All right, so let's try that. Let's try the Python shell. All right, so let's look at that Python TTY shell upgrade. Let's also see if we even have bin bash. We see zcats on there. Okay, we do have bin bash, so that's fine. All right, so here is what we're going to do. We're going to Python's not found. Python 3. Okay, so we need to do Python 3. So I need to write this somewhere else before I paste it. There we go. All right, excellent. So now we have a working terminal. Clear doesn't work, but that's fine. Okay. Let's look in his home directory, see what we have. We're in James's, or in the home, in the actual home directory. So let's go into paradoxes. Okay, so we see a backup.zip. His history has gone to dev null, so that's not going to give us anything there. We do see the customer details, GPG, his priv key. So these look definitely like the same files that we encountered on the web server. With that backup, we can look at the date. We see November 8th, and let's see in our loot directory if that's the same one. Now, because we did wget, if I remember right, it should retain the date. So we see that that's November 8th, 1624, and if we look at this one here, November 8th, 2123. So probably just difference in time zones or whatever that the server was on compared to what I have, and then the switching of military time to normal time too. But yeah, so leads me to believe that this is the exact same file. So what we would like to do is get like an SSH access to this system. And so what we do have as a user, and we have the user's password, but when we tried to brute force it, we noticed that we can only do key logins, right? And so if we look at his home directory, what's staring us in the face here is this .ssh. So if we go to .ssh and we look here, we should have his authorized keys and RSA pub. So what we can do is on our server, we can generate a new key and then use that key to SSH into the server. And so let's do that. Let's move that forward. We'll quit out the FTP site. We're going to quit there. We'll clear this up. Okay. And so we want to do SSH key gen. We want to do the file, and we're going to call this, let's just call it Overpass3 user 1 backdoor. So we're not putting a password for it. It generated the keys. Great. Now again, I'm generating new keys because I don't want to use my Kali host key, because then that puts my key out somewhere on a system. I don't know what's going on. So we just need to cat the overpass backdoor pub key. That's it there. We'll copy this. On this one, we will unknown terminal. Awesome. Means we're using Vim, which means we're never getting out here. Oh, no Vim either. Interesting. Okay, well then let's do it the other way. So that what I did here is I echoed that public key, and then the two brackets there means append, and so it pinned it to the authorized keys files instead of overriding it. So now if we look at authorized keys, we should see our key and the original key in there. Yep. So there's the original, and then there's ours, and you note that by root at Kali Mini. So now we should have the ability to SSH to this system using our key. So SSH, paradox at that and dash I for the key, and that should be overpass. Yes. And bam. So now we're SSH'd in there, and we have a full working terminal. Excellent, right? All right. So with that, now we need to find a way to actually do something more than that, get more privileges. And so this is where we'll start uploading our privilege escalation scripts and seeing what comes out of that. So let's go to that next step now. Um, I like to keep this other shell open just in case we lose the SSH for some reason. SSH is going to be more stable than the netcat session. That PHP thing could die at any time, and that could kill our shell. So always try to have two shells to a box. That gives you access in case you lose one. All right, let's split our window here. What we're going to do is we need to cd opt, and then that's going to be, yep, tools privilege oscillation suite. Let's go ahead and do a get pull. We want to keep our tools updated. We did get 502 updates apparently to LinP, so that's good practice to get into there whenever you're about to run a tool. We'll cd into LinPs. Okay, so that's where our LinPs is at. Excellent. So we're going to SCP. Actually, we can just SCP this LinPs right there. LinPs sh. Let's put this on. Actually, let's split this one. Copy. All right, so SCP. We want to copy our local file. LinPs. Oh, I forgot that slash at the front. And there we go. And then that's going to be paradox at cat targets.text. We need to specify the key, which I think I have to do beforehand. So home, that's going to be -I, and then that's going to be the overpass. There we go. No. There we go. All right, so SCPing using this key, we're going to copy the linps file over to Paradox server using Paradox's name at that IP address, and then we need to specify the location that it's going to copy to. And we'll just put that in temp. Sweet. All right, so then if we cd into temp, we should see it. Yay! So SCPing with the key is usually a big thing to trip up people sometimes, and that's because you got to specify that key beforehand. You got to specify the complete path, and then you got to specify a path for it to actually upload to. So that's usually how I keep it in my head. So I'll exit this. We can exit this side, clear this up. All right. Still got our notes up there. Not sure how much more we'll need them, but we'll use them if we need them. All right, let's run linpeas. All right, linpeas was quick tonight. This used to say 99% a PE vector. I guess that's changed now. They don't want to be as strong with it. All right, so let's see here. Um, Nothing's getting highlighted with the kernel, so that seems usually okay. There's the directories that we're a part of. Home paradox, so again, that's our user. That's not really going to give us much there. We are running on x86-64, so that's also good to know. Environment session variables. So we have the availability to use curl, ping, base64, Python 3, Python 3.6, PHP, and sudo. No major processes standing out so far. So cron jobs, we're looking to see if there's any job that would give us maybe ability to kind of write to those. For the interfaces, we're looking to see if we're maybe inside of a Docker container or something else. Sometimes in these CTF challenges or things like that, they're putting you inside of a container. Here's our call out. Here's it noting that it found the PGP keys. It does not look like we can do the sudo-l trick. Oops. Users are still James and Paradox. James is the first user, Paradox is the second one. And if you didn't know that with Linux, usually your users start with 1000 and then they go up from there. There's the SSH keys, which we have added. All right, so this is interesting here, NFS exports. Again, searching for the PGP keys, and again, we found just the ones that we have. So this one has mail installed, but there's nothing in there. Sometimes on some of these CTF boxes, you'll want to check these mailboxes. Um, that they might put something in there just to be tricky, or it's a way to kind of put something somewhere. Um, so these are the files that we created in temp. Files owned by me or writable by everyone not in home. Okay, nothing out of the ordinary there. These are all the potential password type files. Most of the time, this is stuff that just gets caught up because of just the wording there. All right, so we're back down to the terminal. The biggest takeaway from that looked like it was that the no root squash. So let's look at that and see. Oops, no root squash. All right, so if we read the XC exports file, you'll find some directory that is configured with no root squash. Then you can access it from as a client and write inside that directory as if you're local root of the machine. So this would give us the ability to kind of write something as root. So if you found this vulnerability, you can exploit it mounting the directory in client mode. So we need to, all right, as an attacker, let's make this a little bit bigger. So we would create a directory on our machine. Then we would mount the shared folder, copy bash over there, make sure that we add the sudo bit to bash, and then on the victim machine, we basically cd into that directory that we copied. So again, what this is saying is basically that mount is the place that this is mounted as it doesn't squash the root flag or the sudo bit, and then we would execute bash basically as root. Um, but when we go back to thinking about when we were looking at our scans, right, there was no additional ports open. We had just the 3 ports. So let's look on this system and see if there are additional ports that we're just not missing. So with that, we can do netstat lnt. Netstat's not found. SS lnt. So if netstat's not found, the newer version to that is SS, and then basically it's still LNT. So what we see here is that we do have the following additional listening ports. We have 2049, 111, 248, 44819, 46677, and then 22. And then you have your IP6s here. And NFS is 2049. So we don't have the ability to access it from the outside in, even though it's listening. So there's probably firewall that's blocking that. So one of the ways that you could do this is that we already have an SSH session, and what we could do is we could upgrade our SSH session or run some kind of tunneling tool to basically tunnel the traffic over. So we could use Chisel, we could use Metasploit, or we could use SSH. All right, so if I remember right, I'm trying to push the keys. Forget which one it is. In an SSH session, you can change the way that you're logged in via like a control tilde key. SSH shell control. Let's see what else we could do. Let's just do this. Okay, cd loot, right? SSH I overpass. There we go. We want -L. Right, so this is going to be local port. We want to do 2049, and then that's going to go 127.0.0.1 over to 21T49, and that is going to be paradox at $, that cat targets. Yep, text. All right. So on our system, again, we're using the key overpass. We're specifying to listen on our host on port 2049, whatever that traffic is, to then send that over to the local host that we're logging into, Paradox, on 2049. Okay. So now, if on our system, we should see that we have port 2049 open. See, right there. So we can mount that directory now, doing it that way. So let's make a directory. Make dir mount. Okay, clear. And what we're going to do is mount dash t nfs. Says the type. We are going to mount it to localhost because that's where we have the 2049, as I put in air quotes, and that's going to t. Okay. So if we cd to mount, we see the user flag, so then we know that we were successful, right? All right, so we want to now um, we want to copy over bash, and then we want to set that bit. So we want to cp bin bash over to here. Okay. And so we see that it's root, right? And then what we also want to do is set the pseudo bit. So we want to ch mod plus s bash. So now if we look at that, you'll see that it has, see how it's red and it has the s bit now for the execute section. And so that indicates that is running as a suid bit. So now we have that saved on there, right? And we're as paradox. So let's see if we can run it. All right. Should be in the mount. Where did it put it? Uh, we mounted the drive. S-bin. That's not there. We might have to run linps and see where we put that file. The directory name, the name there is pawn, but we don't have a pawn, right? Uh, yeah. Can we cat the user flag? Okay, so that's the user flag. Whose SSH directory is that? So in this section too, we have the RSA key, so we could download another RSA key. We just got to figure out who this is. Oh, it's James. Okay. So the mount is ran as James or ran as root as James. And so I'm not seeing it here yet. So I'm thinking that we have to log in as James to do that. Okay. All right, so let's download his key, and then we should be able to SSH as him. So we could exit this. We still have this shell for Paradox up here. Let's clear that. ls, we're going to then cp his ID RSA, which is basically his key. We're going to put that in our own directory here. So dot dot from SSH to mount, dot dot to loot, okay, and we're going to name this as James key, okay. So now that should be on our host, which should be here, and we see it here, James key, cool. SSH James at cat targets dot text. Let's go ahead and specify that key. James key. Oops. Need to put a dot dot. Okay, so now we're SSH as James, and there is, okay, so that's where it was. That's exactly what it was. So put the bash. James is the one that has the mount, right? And so when we put that bash file into the mount, it was in James's directory here. That's why we're not seeing it. So now if we run this bash file, we see that we're root now. So now we can get all the flags. So we could close all these up. All right. Paradox. Oh, I should have probably unmounted it. Oh well. All right, so let's find all the flags. A really quick, easy way to do that is find slash. We're going to look for a type of file, and the name